Hey, what is going on, everybody? It's Lee. We're jumping into some more Warhammer. Just letting you guys know who've been following along with my Warhammer journey. I got the Remembrancers videos loaded up, so I'm going to be going through his series. The first one was pretty interesting. I will be taking tactical detours. Right now, I want to check out Orcs War is Life. So, before you guys when you guys have suggestions, use the pinned comment to suggest. That way it keeps things organized. So I don't have to like, yo, what did that person suggest? I know to go under my pinned comments when I'm looking for suggestions. If you guys don't want to follow that, I totally understand. But a month from now, when I'm looking back for things, I might miss you. I'm going to be taking tactical detours to cover some of the videos that I'm just personally interested in. And if you guys have been following me, you guys know I like the orcs. So I'm going to check them out. Then I'll be also covering this, and then I'll be going back. Things like, if it's 60 minutes, sometimes I don't have time to watch a 60-minute video. I like this channel right here because he has his stuff broken down 20, 21 minutes, 13 minutes. So in my day, when I just have a couple, 30 minutes, boom, I could check out a Warhammer video and share it with you guys. Just so you know my process. Maybe you don't care. Maybe you do. If you're wondering why does he upload more, I got your boy Rock Lee. That's my main channel. I do anime reactions. I do Western live action reactions. I do Kdrama reactions. And on my personal time, when I just want to do some content, I check out my passion projects. And right now I have an interest in Warhammer and I have a supportive community. So, hey, that's a win-win. Let's do it. Let's do Orcs. In the grim darkness of the far future, there's only... Oh, I know that by now. Oh. The orcs are the pinnacle of creation. For them, the great struggle is won. They have evolved a society which knows no stress or angst. Oh. The great struggle is won. Who are we to judge them? We Eldar, who have failed, or the humans on the road... Oh, I'm gonna have to pause. I thought I could read fast enough. Or the humans on the road to ruin in their turn. And why? Eldar had failed. Because we saw answers to questions an orc wouldn't even bother to ask. We see a culture that is strong and despise it as crude. Uthin the perverse, Eldar philosopher. Sounds about right. It kind of reminds me of like the homie Tarzan, and like, if I could say Native Americans respectfully, the colonists would come through and say savages or whatever and change their way of life, but they was chilling. They was just chilling, doing their thing, man. Why mess with them or why judge them? Anyways, that's my 2 cents.
Orcs are one of the most fearsome, savage, insidious, and most well-established races in the 41st millennium. They lack any empathy even toward their own race, and they exist as a genetically engineered creation of instinct and a DNA-coded sense of purpose. They're created for one task and one collective goal only:
destroy.
To wage unending war.
Oh, love it. Love it. Look at this.
The Orcs are one of the older races in the 41st millennium, along with the Eldar, being created by the Old Ones. The then Krok would later become what are now known as the race of Orcs, the Eldar, being to wage unending war.
You gotta forgive me, I have ADHD, and I'll be looking at cool stuff, and I'll forget to listen or read.
The Orcs are one of the older races in the 41st millennium, along with the Eldar, being created by the Old Ones.
Okay. My other thing to share with you guys is, if you guys see me doing stuff on the side, this is the only time I show you this, just because there's not a constant need. Orcs, created by the old ones along side the Eldar. There's certain things that have been repeated over and over again, and I'm like, I just need to know that. Am I gonna do this for every piece of information? No. A lot of times I'm just gonna be writing it down, and you're like, what is Lee doing? Like I'm keeping up with notes as best as possible. And every time I hit spacebar, I'm gonna slam it because my spacebar is broken. I need a new one. Shout out to donations.
The then Krok would later become what are now known as the race of Orcs.
And I remember the old ones made the Eldar and the Orcs to back them up. And I guess they weren't good enough. They weren't ready. I actually don't know why they didn't do much for the fight. But the point is the old ones made them and they still lost. And that's that. But the Eldar lived on and the Orcs lived on.
The Eldar were a higher form of design, with them possessing many levels of high intelligence. The Orcs are their exact opposite, working on pure genetic instinct. Orcs and greenskins in general, though, are not born from sexual reproduction.
Orc shroom, surface shrooms, shade required for growth, rock, orc fungus, oh my god, nutrients absorbed, orc embryo, that's cool.
They're rather grown from spores, and all orcs are grown from these same spores.
That's
and
cool.
Fungus, be they lowly snotlings and Gretchen or full-blown orc warriors. Once a planet becomes infected with orc fungus, either by chance or invasion, it'll likely never be free again.
Wow.
Having to forever defend against the unrelenting green menace. This infection is often likened to something like a terminal disease. Once the world is contaminated, it will surely be a case of when, not if, it will eventually wither.
That is awesome lore. It's a planetary disease
throughout the galaxy. But despite their
no one likes orcs.
Instinctive-driven nature, they should never be underestimated. Defense to an orc assault can seem almost hopeless from the outset for some human worlds. With all their strength and power that they can wield, to fight the orcs is nothing other than a battle of attrition. A slow grinding down of morale and willpower. For a
and orcs are not backing down when it comes to willpower.
Only buoys their spirits and emboldens them further to attack again with more fury and more enthusiasm. They won't
orcs are crazy.
They won't slow or surrender. There is no respite. There is no escape. A planet infected by the orc menace is a doomed world.
I love this. I ain't gonna lie.
Genetic sense of being, to fight, to conquer, and to never surrender under any circumstances.
They just won that.
If you could call them that, are usually unsurprisingly simple and unashamedly direct. To overwhelm the enemy with sheer weight of numbers or absolute weapon superiority, to never show their enemies mercy, to smash and obliterate all who
what an awesome description.
Under an unrelenting green tide.
This is so cool.
Violence. They wage war with machines.
I love the concept. First of all, the orcs are one of my favorite races, but it's different because I would not want to be an orc. If you're new to me, I live vicariously through people. So orcs are cool to play as, but I would not want to be an orc. You're not a mindless soldier. You're just out there. You'll just die. I don't want to be that. I'm trying to be someone that likes to live, but I like their description. I like how relentless. I like that their willpower isn't breaking like the humans or the Eldars possibly when they see this horror. You know, they'll lose morale. Not the orcs from what I'm reading. They'll only get enraged. They'll only keep on going. They will not surrender. You can't take any of these guys prisoners willingly. What a beautiful, beautiful fictional race.
That defy logic and technical understanding, and they care little for strategic gain, are seen to be just as likely to slaughter one another as they are the enemy. But most especially,
no tactical gain
in their sights. Orcs are often reported to, for example, skewer one another with swords and other melee weapons just so
because
to gain a killing blow to an opponent, crush their kin with their own vehicles with little, if any, regard, and use heavy weaponry without thought to such a thing as friendly casualties.
Crazy.
Imperial forces are often left to wonder, how does one battle an enemy that defies all logic? And their answer...
Yo, I can imagine the orcs will just run against you, and as you're fighting a goddamn orc, they're shooting artillery At both of y'all. So the orcs are fighting you, and you are dying by orcs and artillery, and the orcs are dying from you and their artillery of their own men. They just don't care.
So usually,
I love it.
Exterminatus.
They defy all logic. What do they eat? If this video doesn't already explain, they live off the sun,
The
like
Orcs, as
photosynthesis.
mentioned previously, are an engineered species. They
literally
created
mean
some
engineered.
60 million
Oh,
years
yes,
ago
we know that, the
by
old ones.
old ones, who also created the Eldar and seeded life across the galaxy.
And see the
The
life.
Orcs were created, as were the Eldar, to wage war against the Necrons.
The
ancient
Necrons.
enemy of
The
old
Necrons.
ones.
The Necrons. The Necrons made the one group of people who now are immortal, but they lost their body and got their souls consumed. Necrons beefed with the old ones. Cool, cool, cool. Necrons. What I really have to remember is the names of things. Orcs, Necrons, old ones. I have to capitalize that. Yeah, you're gonna have to put up with me or not, because my videos they just be raw. Ain't no one gonna edit it. It's just gonna record it and then post it up.
And the Orcs would refer to their creators as the Brain Boys.
Brain boys.
Now, while the Eldar were made to be highly intelligent with extremely powerful psychic powers so as to best counter the Necron and Catan threat, the Orcs, then Krork, however, were the antithesis of the Eldar. Muscle-bound, irrationally aggressive, and rarely showing signs of advanced intelligence. They're driven by designed instinct.
Designed instinct.
Orcs,
That
you see,
word
require
again.
war and brutality, as others might need food and water to sustain them. To an orc, war and brutal savagery is not a desire, it's a physical requirement to their identity. And this is why they often fight amongst themselves
To
as
eat.
much as they would any outside races. While they do possess advanced tech, it is maintained by a class known as Oddboys, who, as with all other orcs, are driven more by just a gut feeling, a born knowledge, than a true
Born
awareness
knowledge.
of what they're actually doing. Unlike the Imperium of the 41st millennium, the Oddboys possess the instinct of skill to not only maintain, but more importantly, to actually develop technology, if you can really call it such. This skill isn't learned or researched by any conventional sense of tech development, it's instead bound into their genetics. As with all things orc, most of their skills are instinctive.
Instinctive skills.
The best way to really envisage this is for them
Fascinating.
to just smash things together until by some miracle it
They
just
work.
works.
Wow.
A kind of deadly galactic scrap heap challenge, if you will. Orcs don't possess any random evolutionary psychic powers as humans might, and say, you know, evolutionary, if it's the old ones which have seeded life, perhaps it's by design, but nonetheless, the psychic power with orcs is comically random, and again, being by design from their creators, the old ones, this bizarre psychic power allows for orcs to literally will something to be true, that if just enough of them believe it, then it will be so. For example, the classic painting their war machines a certain color may imbue it with a power,
speed.
like being more powerful with explosives or just to go faster. Just because enough orcs will believe it to be
I
so,
love that.
with the proximity of numbers of them, means it will become a reality. This enables orcs to achieve things like space travel, even controlling space hulks and bringing them into real space under orc-modified control. A terrifying thought. As well as bringing huge war machines to a battlefield. All of these things, by all rational logic, should be outside their realm of skill and possibility.
What
And
an
this
amazing
genetic
race.
trait is also why orc technology, whilst
Orc.
essentially being just a random collection of things smashed together, will become devastatingly fearsome war machines in the hands of orcs. But then would just as easily return to being useless junk in the hands of other races.
They can't even
Clever
commandeer the
solution
orcs.
to the threat of your war
materia.
gear falling into the hands of an enemy.
Yeah.
And again, this is by design of the old ones.
By
Conversely,
design.
though, if orc numbers dwindle, then
Orc.
it can be potentially counterproductive. Unlike other races who can wield immense power reliably, even in singular or small numbers. Any number of examples would suit, from, say, Imperial Assassins to Grey Knights and Eldar Wraith Knights. The more or less of their own race will not have a bearing on their success, their strength, or their functionality of their tech. Not so much with the Orcs. The awareness of this Orc psychic functionality came into general understanding through the Imperium of Man's tech priests, who, through their own cultivated belief in a machine spirit that inhabits technology, and that this machine spirit serves mankind at the command of the machine god. This imbued them with a perspective and point of reference that enabled them to see the truth of how Orcs were able to bring technology to the fore that should have been far out of their reach. Lastly, the Orc race's
This is a great video.
is particularly interesting. The old ones obviously wanted the Orcs or Krork to be functional as a warrior race, a biological war machine. But before you have the ability to wage war, you still have to fulfill any life form's basic needs, like sustenance.
I thought war was
going
to be
the
sustenance,
basics of life.
but not
The Old
really.
Ones in their wisdom imbued the Orcs with a powerful genetic advantage here on top of their already many powerful genetic traits. For one, when it comes to food and liquid intake, the Orcs can use their own growing fungus as a food source. They'll happily eat pretty much anything, though, when it comes to meat, and the lower Orc forms of snotlings will cultivate this fungus food. The more interesting elements of their biology, though, is that Orcs really are something like a symbiotic animal-fungus hybrid, making them partly eukaryotic in nature. Now, fungus was historically part of the plant kingdom, but fungi lack chlorophyll, the green pigment in plants that converts light energy to chemical energy.
I'll talk about
They also have other
photosynthesis.
distinct structural and physiological features, and are so classed separately from plants. Now, it has been suggested that Orcs' green skin and their blood could directly contain chlorophyll, so as to allow Orcs to actually photosynthesize
Yo!
as a plant.
I'm glad it's being
and thereby
covered.
provide Orcs with some energy so they can survive longer without actual food. Now, the only problem, this makes absolutely no sense for the reasons that I just mentioned. Fungi don't have chlorophyll. So if Orcs grow and were cultivated as a plant-based life form, in part, this would actually be more reasonable. But they're not. They're grown from fungi. So apparently the generator Magos biologists of the Imperium should actually do some more microscopic comparisons before they reach their conclusions. However, it's also suggested that Orcs in their...
So is the commentator just saying that they're wrong? Is the humans of Warhammer saying that the Orcs have chlorophyll, but the commentator's like, that wouldn't make sense because they're fungi? Do the humans not know they are fungi? Do the humans think they're plants?
blood and bodies may contain some sort of algae, and that this might be actually what's responsible for the coloration, and then also possibly the ability to photosynthesize to a degree. This is a more reasonable concept, but as with all alien races, information is pretty scarce.
These are just all speculation.
So this one point aside, other orc anatomical interests are that an orc's animal-fungal symbiosis means that they actually contain less critical organs than, say, a human, meaning orcs can afford to take wounds and damage that actually might kill a lesser creature, but it will allow them to continue functioning. Part of the reason they are so surely haphazard when in battle, almost careless, is their bodies are essentially designed to be simple, practical, and operate even when catastrophically damaged, which rings true of everything we know about their purpose and their design. They were designed to be a biological war machine and nothing more.
They remind me of zombies, but they actually have logic to it.
Whereby orcs will grow according to, I suppose, unsurprisingly, how violent they are. They'll generally continue to grow at a varying rate dependent on how successful they are in combat, be that versus other orcs or their enemies, and then their growth will stagnate again.
Cool. Cool. Give me a second. There was like one thing I just had an epiphany on. Oh, they remind me of zombies. It's like they don't have a traditional heart and lung. So, you know, you take out a human's heart, that's it. Is my understanding they're like a group of fungi? So you can take out a central part, but like their arms are there. How do you kill one then? How do you officially kill the orc? Is it the headshot? I imagine you could blow off an orc's chest and they'll still be crawling on the ground and still slice you. And I can see an orc is chasing you down and you mow it down with bullets, and it still keeps going like zombies because of the way its anatomy is. It's a really cool race, man. I can't think of what it reminds me of, but it's a neat biological. Man, I'm gonna say some things that are gonna sound very questionable, but I filter it right before it comes out, and I'm like, normally, this is a weird statement, but I'm gonna continue it. They are a really cool biological weapon, and yes, I said cool biological weapon, because in essence, if a race wanted to weaponize them, I don't know if this is possible, but I'm thinking of if we wanted to weaponize something like this, you would drop it on a area, and the orcs would spawn. You know, first it would take a while before they spawn, and then maybe they'd only be able to mutate like 10 times. I've seen this work with the viruses. Yes, yes, yes. I've seen this work with viruses or bacteria in fiction where it can only multiply so much so that it can won't be an epidemic. So you drop it on an area, they multiply, they kill 10,000 people, but after so much division, it just stops and it just dies after doing its damage. So that's really cool. So the thing could happen with the orcs where you drop the spores, but they don't create more spores. So you just drop the spores, you have your orcs, they pop out, they don't create any additional spores, you're good. That's the kind of stuff I would do. That's really cool. If I was in a Warhammer, of
Orcs
course.
live across a wide and scattered number of worlds throughout the galaxy, some in a state of war, some in endless skirmishes, and some dominating worlds, ruling them as overlords, with often human slaves obeying their brutal command.
They
The
take
Orcs'
slaves?
expansion
That's interesting.
was really an accident, as best known in Orc history. Of course it was. This is why even now their settlements are often random with no real pattern, focus, or direction. The Eldar claim Orcs have become part of reality itself. Mankind as well scouted, probed the galaxy, all of the known galaxy, and everywhere that they explored, they found the Orc. The galaxy at this point is contaminated beyond any hopes of cleansing and salvaging
By the Orc.
from the Orc. Because of the random and haphazard fashion by which Orcs discover, explore, and inhabit the galaxy, they have splintered into various communities.
Communities of orcs.
These
Okay.
communities are usually just a confederacy of tribes, either loosely or under a warlord. Each tribe is a random bunch of orcs just smashed together with clans and various mechs and materials.
Do
It's
they-
a
and
mishmash
they're-
of
do they-
violence and constructivity. It's best not to
Constructivity.
overthink it. It bears no resemblance to any ordered sense of a community or a society. Orcs have known of mankind and their emperor for some time.
They
that
know of the
humans
emperor.
worship the emperor and have seen his shrines and symbols across
How?
human society.
Oh, okay,
They regard
okay.
the emperor as the god of the humans.
The god of the
This
humans.
is easy for orcs to understand as they have their own gods. Even though they see humans as weak, they do respect the emperor as a powerful war god. From the orc point of view, the emperor is a constant warlord to the humans. They see him everywhere in human society. And
Yes.
so to the orcs, this widespread war god must surely be powerful.
So they want
and
to get to
therefore
him.
be respected. Some orcs speak of
Oh.
a legend where the emperor
Oh.
would appear as a manifestation, challenging the orc gods to battle. But still, despite this, he's also seen to the orcs as a confusing figure. Why he would command his human servants to take on so many pointless tasks when they could be just fighting makes no sense to the orcs. The humans' constant failures or their stress and despair seems to underline this confusion for orcs. Hence why they
Yeah.
often use the word "ooman" as a slang for things that are pointless, impractical, or just counterproductive.
Omen.
The orcs' attitude to life is fairly simple, and therefore they cope with the realities of the universe far better than many other races. With no overarching goals and day-to-day concerns being really only whether to build or fight or eat, it's quite a stress-free life, especially when you have no fear of your own mortality from an orc
Yeah.
point of view. Generally speaking, they don't try to influence their own destiny, they don't try to apportion blame, unless it's some stupid Gretchen looking to get his head bashed in. Their hatred is spread equal among their enemies and allies, and if they fail no guilt, try again in a different way. Unlike
If they
humanity,
fail, no
chaos
guilt.
has little to any fear or effect with orcs. Their minds are hardwired to their simple day-to-day activities, so dreams of power and turning against each other for some cause is not something that's likely to spread very insidiously through a tribe of orcs. They're probably too busy already killing each other over some far more trivial matter.
Yo, son! You could just be chilling with some orcs, and there could be like 10 of y'all, right? Like 10 orc homies, right? One just bashes like 2 of his homies. And the others join in on bashing their friend. And they just go back to chilling. But if that was anybody else, like, yo, that orc killed my friend. That orc Johnny killed my friend, Orc Billy. So now we have to run the block and just get vengeance on Orc Johnny's whole family. Nah. By the way, I know they're spores, so they're all kind of brothers and sisters, cousins, whatever. Oh, they're actually all dudes. I think they're all dudes. Like Piccolo. Shout out to the Namics. I think the Namics are orcs. That's actually pretty cool. And they have green skin and such. No, the Namics are. Anyways, but that's just kind of cool to me how they can just do that. Because it reminds me of just basic animals, birds, squirrels, whatever. They'll just go at it, and then it's done. They just move on about their business. No vengeance, no spinning the block, and fire bash. Yeah, cool, man.
Because of their simple and, objectively speaking, stress-free lifestyle, it leaves little psychic stress by which chaos can actually invade them. Also, even though some races may look upon
when they're saying chaos, they're not talking about chaos and mayhem. They're talking about the energy chaos, right? Chaos energy. Give me a second. Just make sure. White House reaffirms complete nuclearization. Like, look, by the way, you can see my whole thing is war. Why did Russia invade Ukraine? What else? What's this? K-pop. Stocks and war. I give up. China says it will grow relations, control Congress. Warship that survive. Yeah. More Navy stuff. It's politics and military. I get Russia will have airlifted A-15 to prepare. I love this stuff, man. I love the information. I don't take pleasure in human suffering. Chaos Warhammer. Just making sure. Chaos is a term used by mortals to describe the knowledge and spiritual force of supernatural disorder that affects the known world. Do they have Chaos Marines? Chaos Knights? Yes. It's that energy that comes from the warp, right? Chaos Warhammer comes from the warp. Sorry. The warp. Chaos and the warp. The same. Chaos is not the warp, but chaos is part of the warp. What chaos is the embodiment of the worst excesses of mankind. Sorry, I just went on a detour. Has nothing to do with the video. Our warp sharp is the order. Yes and no warp. Chaos is not the warp, but chaos is a part of the warp. What chaos is the embodiment of the worst excess of mankind. The warp is made of emotions and thoughts. And chaos represents most extreme emotions of all sentient life. Anger becomes blood-crazed monstrosity who rages at life from atop a pile of skulls. Despair becomes a gargantuan slob who cheerfully tells you to just stop caring. Hope and ambition become a mad conspirator entrapped in a labyrinth of unfathomable plans and horrible secrets. And pure concepts of excess become a being of excess who lives only for the next massive high. Oh. Why is chaos so awful? Well, it's because the galaxy is so awful. Millennia of war, Hinduism, hedonism, not a good reader. Fear, superstition, hatred, and just plain madness. Substition. It's not even superstition. What are you saying? And just plain madness have thrown the warp out of semblance of balance. And practically speaking, that means chaos rules the warp. Well, you're not wrong. Like, the warp is an alternative dimension to our own. Chaos could be described as a major faction that operates in the warp, those being the chaos gods and their respective demons and followers. There's a whole lot. Chaos is what happens when reality leaks into the warp and creates a distorted echo of itself. Jeez. There's like a whole video, hypothetically, I could watch on, like, what is chaos in Warhammer? Okay. Okay. I do know what the Chaos Gods are. Okay. I do know the 4 Chaos Gods. And I'm sorry about this rabbit hole I found myself in. Alright.
Upon the Orcs as evil, either due to their near mindless savagery or their endless conquest of worlds, this is actually a pretty ignorant perspective. Lumping Orcs in alongside dark forces like Chaos or Dark Eldar is really a disservice to the Orcs, because they exist by design. And they have become simply very effective at existing. Follow their instincts, and these are hard-coded into their very being. Evil,
they're like biological
but
machines.
Savage, definitely. It's also often mistaken that perhaps if one were to see Chaos and Orc fighting on the same battlefield, that they are somehow an alliance. In reality, it's probably more simply that the Orcs just see them as other fighters on the field, who they'll probably turn to deal with in short order once the nearer enemy to them has been battered into submission. And when it comes to trade, Orcs strangely do have this as part of their culture. And they use their teeth, literally their teeth. It's actually a comically natural solution to economic inflation, because Orcs go through their teeth similarly to something like a shark. They replace and regrow them frequently. Orc teeth also degrade over time, so it's impossible to stockpile them. This keeps prices in Orc trading constant and ensures that all Orcs have access to regular currency and commodities. And besides, if you're running short on teeth, it's no problem. You can just go
bash somebody and take their teeth
and get yourself some more.
I knew it.
Orc
I knew it.
Language is deemed as being very gothic, and Orcs are able to communicate with others, but at a very basic level. Orc script, though, is very different altogether, and it's actually written in glyphs. The core
They
of
have
this
a
is
writing?
simple clan indicators, and these are then adapted using phonetic symbols which can form some of the key Orc words. It's pretty simple, though, because it's just generally not needed by the Orc race. They function by design, not structure or organization. They have no need to keep records, log data, or any other useful societal function for writing and literature. These aren't important for Orcs. The Orc way is one of near anarchy. They're ruled by traditions and understandings much more than laws and governing. And it's pretty simple. Orc society is about
Orc society.
Strong Orcs will rise up, weak ones will work or are killed, and they in turn benefit from the leadership of the stronger Orcs. If an Orc tribe is beaten by a stronger one, the survivors gain the leadership of a better tribe, making them stronger. And there's no rules about a tribe's size, location, or purpose. It's just the rough grouping of Orcs in a given area at a given time. And each is led by a warlord whose authority is pretty loose, giving just maybe enough rule to prevent all the Orcs from turning on each other. A tribe could be a few hundred.
How do you take over a tribe if they don't... How do you take over a tribe and have survivors if the Orcs don't surrender? You know what I mean? Like, how did y'all survive? Who is surviving? Are all the warriors dead and it's just the lesser Orcs? Like, how does that work? Why do you stop fighting? Do you guys just fight each other until enough of your leadership dies? And then before you know it, y'all are fighting on the same team, and you just stop and look at each other and go, Orc! And just start trading teeth? I don't know.
100 strong, a few million. The literal numbers are not important. Large tribes are usually split into smaller groups of warbands which are ruled by war bosses. And these warbands are usually a few hundred strong, creating smaller forces ready to battle wherever it's necessary, or whenever they feel like it. While Orcs will belong to a tribe, they also will belong to a clan. Now, a tribe may break apart into parts or form new ones, but clans are enduring and remain a reasonable constant from an Orc point of view. Some of the most noted Orc clans are as follows. Now, the Bad Moons, these are some of the most wealthy Orcs. They're essentially what could be regarded as the merchant caste in Orc society.
Oh, that's
the
interesting.
Blood Axes were the first Orc clan to encounter the Imperium of Man, and they adopted human tactics of camouflage, albeit slightly bright camouflage. And usually for Orcs, they'll sometimes actually retreat, having picked this up also from humans, but they'll usually return, and in greater numbers. This clan will sometimes even trade with humans, even having been known to work as mercenaries for them, which sounds crazy, but may be uncomfortably necessary. The Death Skulls are essentially looters and scavengers. They appropriate battlefield loot to make themselves stronger, including Imperial war gear. The evil sons are orcs who are committed to speed, and whatever makes them go fast should be as loud as possible. They also wear flying vehicles like fighters, fighter bombers, and they usually seem to wear at least some red material, because as all orcs do know, red ones go faster. Goths. The Goths are simply tough orcs. They're the biggest, the most brutal. They thrive on battle more so than others, and they're driven by the blood fury of close quarter battle. Snakebites worship ancient traditions over advanced tech. They protect themselves with war paint and may even choose to remain as feral orcs instead of developing their skills with mechs and guns. Finally, the freebooters. These are the pirates. These orcs are notorious thieves driven by the blood fury of close quarter battle. Snakebites worship ancient traditions over advanced tech. They protect themselves with war paint and may even choose to remain as feral orcs instead of developing.
They may choose to remain as feral orcs instead of developing their
with mechs and guns.
With mechs and guns. Mechs is probably what it's saying.
Finally, the freebooters. These are the pirates. These orcs are notorious thieves, preying upon anything or anyone that they find. They'll kill anybody they see. They'll seize upon, haul their booty back to their hidden bases. So now we go to orc religion. Whether intentional or not, the old ones ended up imbuing the orc with a religious sensibility. They worship their two gods, Gork and Mork. One is brutal and cunning, and the other is cunning and brutal. The orc gods are the center of orc energy. They drive and empower their whole culture. The best idea we have of how the orcs perceive their gods is in their mechs. These are the physical manifestation of their orc gods and drive their followers into stupefying frenzies of violence and bloodlust. They're also seen in armoured battle suits Gorkanaut and Morknaut. These armoured suits are seen as idols, and the orcs piloting these suits gripped with visions of their gods, urging them to fight on harder, faster, more brutally, and inevitably to meet their demise on the battlefield. While orcs often talk of Gork and Mork as separate entities, it's even possible they are one, perhaps with two sides, or provide different visions.
The holy duo, as we have our holy trinity.
It doesn't stop the orcs from often favouring one or the other, being known as either Gorkers or Morkers. One figure in the Imperium knows more of Gork and Mork than most others. He is Vulcan, the Primarch of the Salamanders. He is what's known as a perpetual in the 40k universe.
Whoa. I just thought of my own stuff.
On the battlefield.
So if you guys are new here, you guys know I'm working on a story. So, without spoiling anything, I was trying to come up with what my main character could be 3 variations of the same person or an entity. And very similar to the Holy Trinity, Holy Duo, without spoiling if y'all ever became interested, you know? And one of that is I was having trouble giving her identity because I have ADHD and I want all these things in one character, and that's too much. And I found a way where I could do that. I'm not talking about multiple dissociative identity differs. I think they have prefers. God damn it. I'm sorry. My mind is all over the place. They don't call them personalities anymore. They call them, I'm not even going to try. But the point is, you don't say personalities anymore. It's something else, and I forgot. What is the alternative word? What is the... Alters, as I was about to do. What is alternative method? All right, alters. So my character is not going to have alters. There might be her historical version, her present version, and like her powers, which y'all could have. Like, you know, there's God the Father, there's God, there's Jesus, and then there's a Holy Spirit, and everyone can have access to the Holy Spirit, which is an extension of God's power, you know? Yeah.
While orcs often talk of Gork and Mork as separate entities, it's even possible they are one, perhaps with two sides, or provide different visions to different orcs. Still, it doesn't stop the orcs from often
Maggie,
one or the other being known
or
as
Sinbad does exactly what I just talked about with their metal items.
Gork and Mork than most others. He is Vulcan, the Primarch of the Salamanders. He is what's known as a stop the orcs from often favouring one or the other, being known as either Gorkers or Morkers. One figure in the Imperium knows more of Gork and Mork than most others. He is Vulcan, the Primarch of the Salamanders.
How do you know?
He is what's known as a perpetual in the 40k universe.
A perpetual?
Essentially, he's an immortal. He can regenerate from almost any injury,
Yeah.
even something like being vaporized.
Okay.
Vulcan disappeared after the Horus Heresy, but he would appear some 1500 years later
Oh my
in the
God.
imperial world of Kdrama to aid in defending it against a massive orc invasion. Although he
Oh.
died many times over, he would regenerate and appear again on the front lines. The Imperial Inquisition
sucks.
requested he lead a mission to destroy the orc war boss known as the Beast, but Vulcan refused until Kdrama was saved. With the aid of Imperial forces, Vulcan saved Kdrama from destruction and would return to Terra, gathering an Imperial force to Ullanor, to the homeworld of the Beast.
They
Vulcan
say
would lead the
Illinois,
final
that's funny.
charge into the Beast's massive temple Gargant, confronting the war boss there. During a powerful struggle, the Primarch and the war boss would fall into the Gargant's power generator.
Power
Vulcan
generator?
created a detonation in the generator so powerful it killed not only the Beast, but a massive chain reaction, shattering the temple Gargant and obliterating them. Vulcan was
Wow.
presumed dead by the Imperium, but the Salamander Space Marines still hunt for him, believing him indestructible and that he will return to them. And the point of the
Aww.
story was what Vulcan would witness in the heart of the Orc Gargant when exposed to its powerful generator. He witnessed the raw energy that was the culmination of all the Orcs' WAAAGH, and he would witness the origins of the Orcs and their gods Gork and Mork battling one another at the beginning of time. This powerful vision allowed Vulcan to understand the true nature of the Orcs, how they are a race of evolution through experimental anarchy.
And experimental anarchy. In the hand of Gora and Mork, they sent me to roost up the boys, to crush them and kill, 'cause the boys forgot me therefore. I was once one of the boys till the gods smashed me and did. And I remember that Orcs is meant to conquer and make work boys of everything they don't kill. Ghazghkull. Huh. Cool. Probably shouldn't have paused, but it gave you plenty of time to read that.
Now, the Orcs have been an ever-existing threat to the Imperium of Man, but towards the end of the 41st millennium, there's been seen an explosion in Ork WAAAGH. Now, the Orc Dominion, or
WAAAGH.
Empire, marks the regions in the galaxy currently controlled by the Xenos. Some planets are now completely controlled by the Orc race, where others are in an unending state of brutal, nightmarish, and near-hopeless war. Orcs have been heard to keep under control some of the local populace, creating a prison workforce who are kept in unbearable, exhausting and dangerous conditions, abiding by their uncaring savage slave masters. Most of these prisoners will be unlikely to ever know any other life than being subject now to the Orcs'
Damn.
brutal will. The Orcs will at any time also control random isolated worlds, as well as rampaging hordes that sweep through the galaxy, battling all that they encounter. They also have been found inhabiting ancient space hulks.
Oh.
Now, as an aside, a space hulk is simply a term given by the Imperium of Man to any ancient wrecks of space vessels.
Oh.
These hulks are no mere freighters or even warships, but giant ancient vessels, possibly from the early exploration of mankind or even lost in the Age of Strife.
Age of
They can be
Strife.
so massive
Age
as to
of
even
Strife.
maintain their own gravity, or in
What?
rare cases, atmosphere. The hulks can
What?
often appear and disappear, transitioning between the warp and normal space.
Have
This
its
makes
own
exploring
gravity
them
and atmosphere.
extremely dangerous. As well as orcs, they often can host other dangers like the vile Xenos Tyranids, who have been found often using these hulks as breeding grounds for their gene stealers. Even Chaos Space Marines can sometimes be found there, either searching for ancient tech or preparing to launch hidden attacks against the Imperium. While there is great potential reward in searching a space hulk, there is also immense danger, coupled with the ambient danger of the own hulk's instability. As such, searching these vessels is left to the elite warriors of the Imperium and the Space Marines, the Space Marine Terminators. They're some of the
Space
most heavily
Marine
armored units
Terminators.
within a Space Marine chapter, and their
Jeez.
ancient Terminator armor enables them to carry out the extremely dangerous task of searching the hulks. Now, humans have explored extensively in the 41st millennium, and they have found orcs to inhabit every corner of the galaxy.
Jeez.
This seems unlikely to change now or in the future. The Orcs are not a race of reason or diplomacy or even needs. They exist as a genetically engineered creation of instinct and a DNA coded.
Yeah, they make it sure you know that.
Spread across the galaxy more like a plague than conquerors. This plague of war is often referred to as the WAAAGH.
Oh, the
Orc
WAAAGH.
conflicts
I finally
remain
saw the
localized to
WAAAGH.
their own planets, or objectively speaking, small raids to worlds inhabited by other races or other orc or pirate-like raids on passing ships. Again, as with most things that orcs do, there's usually not a grand plan here, so don't overthink it. A WAAAGH, though, is a different happening altogether. When numbers of orcs reach a critical mass, they feel a need to migrate to form a crusade,
like a beehive,
apocalyptic aggression that will sweep through a region, destroying anything in its path. Numbers of orcs are beyond estimation, then they'll swarm through a segmentum of space, exterminating everything in their path. You could liken this to a locust plague or a viral pandemic, until it eventually burns itself out. A WAAAGH also refers to a psychic field that affects orc psyche. This is, again, as with all things orc, an instinctive state, enabling them to make simple observations of understanding. This applies to everything from designation of seniority, which again, don't overthink that, it's usually more akin to who is just bigger and therefore more right. All orcs generate this dull psychic field by default. It binds them together and helps their ramshackle culture function. The more
they're just somehow organized,
the stronger this shared psychic field becomes, and this is amplified through sheer numbers, or if they say are enjoying a really good bit of battle and smashing their enemies' faces in. The WAAAGH helps drive them, and you could think of it as being akin to momentum, where past a point it's just going to increase. A WAAAGH can begin on a small scale, sometimes as a small individual who may have some vision of great carnage and feel inspired to share with others by smashing their heads in until they get it. Or if he's imbued with a sense of tech skill, maybe he's going to create some giant Gargant war machine that gets the blood and hype of his fellow orcs running high.
That's so awesome.
War and coming carnage spread like wildfire through the orcs, only exacerbating this sense of WAAAGH.
What kind of words this man uses?
Who is simply a big, powerful orc in command of his tribe, will usually rise to their aspired position through just basically beating the hell out of all around them until fellow orcs just get it that he's the biggest and the strongest. His decisions will be enforced by a ruling caste of orcs known as knobs. And these are again a bigger than normal orc who will surely remind those below them of the fact at every opportunity with some casual violence. A war boss in a time of WAAAGH will assert himself through unsurprisingly more savage, senseless violence towards his fellow orcs. When a war boss has created enough blunt trauma to be recognized as a powerful boss, he'll then be deemed an orc warlord. As his status spreads, more and more clans will come under his control, growing an unrelenting green mass of aggression. The mechs and brain boys will build ever more outlandish creations, absurd in their brutality and genius in their creativity. Vicious war machines belching smoke and oil, poisonous vapors, acrid smoke, mobile fortresses, titanic war engines created from basically random scrap metal and abandoned, twisted, now cannibalized war engines. As the war boss grows
this guy
stronger,
really knows how to write/talk.
He will subsume his challengers' armies, with many of the orcs now seeking the sense of WAAAGH with a bloodthirsty insanity. Mech boys raise towers of WAAAGH.
So I kind of feel like I got the answer to my question before. It would seem if two groups of orcs fight each other, but it doesn't necessarily mean the WAAAGH will happen. Like, they'll just get it. They'll just get it. Like, they won't even realize that they're having a war with each other. It'll just be a conflict. One side will just win, and it's not necessarily about surrendering. They just get it that those guys are the bosses because they beat enough people to establish that they're the bosses, and the losing orcs just join that group, right? That's how it would work.
And Gargants will start to be seen. Gargants are the equivalent of Imperial Titans, and so represent a world-ending level of firepower. These Gargants are idols, or seen as avatars to the orc race as manifestations of their gods Gork and Mork. They are merciless assemblies of sheer destruction. Gargants form no standard pattern of design, as does barely anything in the orc way of creation. They are instead a random collection of parts and combinations of cannibalized war machines. and this excitable and chaotic nature of these builds makes their weapon systems unreliable. Their whole design is haphazard and probably about as dangerous to the crew as to their targets on their battlefield. A clear difference between most Orc war machinery and other races in the galaxy is they don't utilize guidance systems commonly. They
No
also
guidance
carry
systems.
large crews of Orc and the lower, smaller race of Gretchen. And they operate these war machines as a team, passing down orders as you might imagine a steamship of, say, the 19th century, calling down orders to the engine room and so on. Gretchens are significantly physically smaller than Orcs, and so they're used to repair systems on the go by crawling into tight spaces. Gargants are usually weaker in terms of armor compared to Imperial Titans and relatively shorter range of weaponry. However, they're still difficult to destroy because of the compacted, dense nature of their construction.
Compacted,
one
dense
rare variety
nature.
above a normal Gargant, known aptly as a Mega Gargant.
Mega
This is essentially
Gargant.
a mobile fortress running on tracks. Imperial tales tell of Orcs laying siege to cities, spending even as long as 18 months to construct these colossal machines of war. Returning to the
Colossal
apocalyptic
machines of
WAAAGH,
war.
the continuous swelling of Orc mobs starts to reach a critical mass. Ships and transport vessels are smashed together, and the Orc armies reach a point of no return. This wave of violence now comes crashing down as the Orc armies overflow with bloodlust, descending into battles that consume entire worlds. The
This is
Gargant
crazy.
idols further trigger the instinctive drives of the Orc clans and tribes who would do anything to outdo each other's destructive capabilities.
I know I've seen this in cartoons and such, but like the big robot, and I feel like it is Orcs, but it's always some dumb-like looking creature that is fixing this and repairing it as it go. What I didn't get is the armor is weaker, but the smaller compact structure makes it durable anyways.
At some point, this wave of fury and raging violence reaches its boiling point, and the Orcs begin to gather their great WAAAGH army. The ground
WAAAGH.
shaking under the weight of tracked vehicles and striding walkers. The skies turn black from flyers, belching out blackened exhausts, and their ragged banners of brutality raising high atop these rusting, illogical contraptions of war.
Illogical
Orc WAAGHs
contraptions
are very
of war.
decentralized and have very little true coherency, even with a powerful war boss or warlord overseeing things. Various fragmented factions will exist in a WAAAGH, cults of speed for example, whose principle is to go fast. Essentially speed freaks who love the thunderous roar of an engine, and if they can shoot some guns at the same time, all the better.
Yep.
Probably driving over and crushing some of their own kind in the process. Stormboys are elite shock troops who strap huge rockets on their back to make sure they're first into battle, charging with no thought much to the consequences. And this is actually frowned upon by many Orcs as they prefer to charge in under their own feet to get physically into the battle. Still, seeing a Stormboy's volatile rocket pack malfunction go spinning off into an exploding disaster, certainly killing the pilot in the process, is great entertainment for the comrades on the ground. And then of course you've got the Mad Boys. These are Orcs overwhelmed by the psychic energy of WAAAGH. And they also can occur when clans of Orcs inhabit a planet and have to develop their own technology.
I've seen this, man. It kind of reminds me of this group that Moana was fighting. But, like, they just put a rocket on their back because it's freaking cool. And they might just die in the process. So you just imagine, like, I can just imagine, you're a freaking human. You guys are logical. You guys are trying to preserve yourselves to a certain degree. These guys are coming in on rockets. And because of that, it makes them more dangerous. Hear me out. It's like we need to get our troops over from Russia into Ukraine, but it's dangerous to do so. But like drones and missiles, no, let me not use missiles. Let me say drones are very, 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 very cheap. So let's just like have 100,000 of us just hold on to a drone. Just 100,000 of us. And just fly over the Ukrainian border and just jump out and just let go of the drone. Just fall into Ukraine. And then whatever happens, happens. You might even have a bomb strapped to you so that when you land, even if you're dead from impact, you still just explode, right? Or you tactfully fall into combat, you hold on to the drones, then you're falling, And you kind of just look around, you see somebody, you just throw a grenade, you throw another grenade, and you just hit the ground. Maybe you survive, maybe you don't, because you're an orc, and you just get up. Yeah, that's the craziest idea I thought of, because you could just think of ideas. What's the next one? Freaking motorcycles, man. We just get on a whole bunch of motorcycles, and then we have our grenades in our hand, and we just drive as fast as possible through the enemy lines. If you die, you know, you either try and throw your grenade or you just fall, and then if you make it far enough into enemy lines, your grenade just blows up. You guys are gonna say that's a dumb idea. Who cares? I'm an orc. Who cares? This is just what I thought of, and it might be cool. It might work. I don't know. My DNA just told me that this is the plan that we're gonna do. That's crazy, son. Oh, that's why I like this group of people.
Generations of spawned orcs. Either way, mad boys don't coexist well with their kin. They're essentially best described as feral, which is saying something by orc standards. These feral, crazed orcs are also known as nutters, and they're grouped together into squads who will either be a secret tool to success when unleashed on the enemy, or a hindrance when they accidentally slaughter any fellow orcs they happen upon. Once combat begins, mad boys can still be some of the most savage fighters to an orc foe, or fellow orc alike, ripping
fellow orc alike. I like that part.
Like sit in a whimpering huddle, unable to move, overwhelmed by psychic confusion. No orc can tell exactly how they're going to behave, and making them an unpredictable and extremely dangerous force to bring onto the battlefield. Along with their crudely smashed together spaceships and space hulk infestations, orcs have even been reported to convert asteroids into massive space fortresses known as the uncreatively titled Orks. The orc species is one of the most adept at making the best of their surrounding materials, and this is the genius and danger of their design. The old ones created
a
the orcs
rock
with only two things
asteroid
in mind, making them deadly and to make them near impossible to exterminate. Orcs are a plague upon the
And the
galaxy,
old ones
for
are just
sure,
gone.
but not because of their skill in battle or because they spread insidious ideologies, but simply because they're so difficult to truly eradicate. Humanity, for all of its technology and experience, often must resort to planetary exterminatus to be truly sure of destroying an orc infestation. Orcs defeat their enemies by either overwhelming them or wearing them down to a point of collapse through continuous losses in personnel and materials, simply by attrition. Orcs
Battle of
operate from a
attrition,
sheer
baby.
Antithesis of ordinary warfare.
Antithesis.
Usually any force will seek out decisive victories, utilizing minimal resources and seeking to limit casualties.
Nope, not orcs.
On the other hand, seek no limitation in casualties
No limitation.
or resource management. They have no control over this, but to burn as hard and as fast as possible. And even when defeated, they will return to grind down whatever crumbling defenses remain of their enemy.
The warlord. Give me a sec. Well, you guys won't. I'm right back.
Stories and tales of orc warlords and bosses, as there are within the Imperium and its various leaders, captains, and general history. In orc culture and history, you can't
Orc
speak
culture.
of the orcs without mentioning the warlord, Ghazghkull, Mag, or Thraka.
God, is that
He's
one
an orc
name?
warlord of the
Oh.
Goth clan and is an immense symbol of everything orc. Now, despite orcs being generally an anonymous mass of anarchy, he stands out as a powerful leader. He's commanded multiple campaigns and crushed most, if not all, in his sights, be they Imperial, Eldar, or Chaos, smashed the metal skulls of the Necron into brittle scrap. He has
Metal
influence
skulls
above
of the
that of any
Necron.
ordinary orc warlord and is often described as a prophet of their gods. He travels the galaxy subjugating, slaughtering.
And Necron, fuck you. Alright, so I think I got one of my lore confused. So when I was reading earlier and I wrote down my notes, the old ones versus the Necron. At the time I wrote that, I was thinking of the Necron as those beings that actually created the Necron. The Necron got these powers from the beings, and the Necrons fought the old ones. And the old ones created the Eldar and the Orcs, and that they didn't get any support. Hold on, I just because my mind went off. They created the Orcs and the Eldar, and for some reason that didn't really do anything for them. So who created the Necron in Warhammer? I forgot their name. The Star Gods. They're just Star Gods? That's what they were called. Okay. The C10 Star Gods. I forgot them. Alright. I could imagine some of you guys just correcting me along the way, but like kind of figuring it out or catching things along the way. So you guys can't say Lee is not paying attention. Perfect. Okay, got that taken care of. So let's get back to it.
And burning the enemies of the Orc. His vision is to wage a WAAAGH so immense as to summon the Orc gods out of the immaterium and into the physical realm.
Oh, that's
He
fire.
extends their will.
That's fire.
But his beginnings were nothing of note, just another Orc bashing in other Orcs' brains to climb up the ranks, and originating on a planet known as Ork, originally Yaboyrocklee, founded by humans during the Dark Age of technology. Humanity prospered here, rich in minerals.
Yeah, I'm so sorry I put a pause there, but again, so you're just an orc, you just spawn one day, and then something in you just decides to just fight. You start bashing people's head, and all of a sudden you're challenging your leader. My understanding is you can just challenge your leader just because, and they'll either kill you or not. But you just say, yeah, I'm gonna be in charge. You start bashing your way to the top. I think that's kind of cool.
And with easy warp tides flowing for space travel, it was an excellent trade hub. Lights and noise attract attention. Resources make good mechs, and the Orcs would become aware. Attacking with a voracious assault, the Orcs would raise the planet before riding back into the warp tides. As with nearly all,
Sorry about this,
his beginnings
guys.
were nothing of note, just another Orc bashing in other Orcs' brains to climb up the ranks.
I still got
And
distracted by my own
originating
idea.
on a planet known as Ork, originally
Ork.
Yaboyrocklee, founded
Ork.
by humans during the Dark Age of technology. Humanity prospered here, rich in mineral wealth, and with easy
Mineral
warp
wealth.
tides flowing for space travel, it was an
Walk
excellent
tides.
trade hub.
Space
Lights
travel.
and noise attract attention.
Lights and-
Resources make good mechs. And the
Resources
Orcs would
make good
become
mechs.
aware. Attacking with a voracious assault, the
see.
Orcs would raise the
They were
planet
rich in
before riding back
resources.
into the warp tides. As with nearly all Orc assaults, the departure is not as clean as it appears to be. They'd leave behind fungal spores, and the Orcs would return in time. Other species would periodically form outposts on the planet. Sometimes the Orcs would rise up, other times not. Sometimes they'd be destroyed, sometimes not. It wouldn't be until the Great Crusade of mankind, though, that any humans would return here in numbers. The Dark Angel Space Marine Legion would lay claim to the world, and for 2,000 years
Dark
humanity
Angel
would build,
Space
mine,
Legion.
and establish a functioning order on the reinstated world of Yaboyrocklee.
Hercules.
That wasn't until around the 32nd millennium when a great Ork WAAAGH swept through the system. Humans were overwhelmed again and evacuated, fleeing into the warp.
Jeez.
But its tides destabilized, and Yaboyrocklee would be cut off and not easily reached by outside influence again for about 8,000 years. The Orc
Jeez.
tribes, however,
It's a long
remained,
history.
battling one another and fighting over the human ruins that remained. A state of genuine attrition was reached, with various warbands fighting over ever-diminishing resources, none of them able to unite under a single leader.
Okay.
Then came Ghazghkull. One thing
The
important
original
about
guy.
Orcs, though, was that their WAAAGHs could be quashed if detected early enough. The Imperium would begin to deploy observation posts so as to best detect and monitor Orc numbers and activity. Dark Angels monitored this, as well as they routinely monitored human populations for potential recruiting planets. After the warp tides had
Recruiting
calmed, the
planets.
Dark Angels were able to establish one such outpost on Ork, so as to monitor this well-occupied.
I do want to know about their recruitment methods, because it seems like they'll just go to a planet and just recruit people. That, like, what are the human recruitment methods? There's actually so much to this world. This guy would just casually talk about something, and it's like, yeah, what is that? Do you know what I mean? What is that? All right, back to it.
Orc planet. The Orcs, however, desperate for any loot and resources, managed to discover this observation post, and it was quickly overrun. At this time, Ghazghkull was just a Goth's trooper in a warband, and during the frenzy to claim the base, he would be shot in the head by a bolter shell. A devastating
That was my
injury would
question.
shatter his skull and pulp a section of his brain.
Pulp a section of his
Staggering
brain.
back to his feet with immense toughness, he drew the respect of Orcs around him, especially Goths. Despite being a physical wreck, staggering and stumbling, his blood and brains spilling out into his own hands, they eventually found their way to a doc, who would perform what I guess Orcs deemed to be an operation. As is often the way with Orcs, this was less a repair and more an improvement, an augmentation, and probably a bit of an experiment. Ghazghkull found that his skull and brain were now strengthened with bionics.
Okay.
Sinew and adamantium plating.
Adamantium?
Alterations were
Like
great to be
Wolverine's
sure,
adamantium?
but nothing compared to the vision he would see awakening from this augmentation. He would see a vision from Gork and Mork themselves to lead Orcs on the greatest, most destructive and carnage-reaping WAAAGH that there had ever been.
Oh my
It was his
god.
sole core belief that
Oh
he had
my
been in
god.
direct contact with his gods, and that he was the chosen leader and the executor of their commands. That, or his brain got pulped by a bolt gun round through the skull. Either way, his purpose was clear and his resolve
That's
strengthened.
hilarious.
And as is often the way in Orc culture, the whys and wherefores are not really relevant. It's the
All that
actions
matters is the
count,
belief.
And Ghazghkull's actions would be notable.
Oh, the
Orc
actions.
warlords began to fall immediately under his crushing will. The Death Skull's warlord Dregmek, with Ghazghkull barely minutes out of his surgery, the Death Skull's warlord
Minutes out of his
attacked,
surgery.
unleashing a bullet storm that left Ghazghkull untouched. By perhaps godly intervention, Dregmek could not believe his eyes as Ghazghkull would stride forward, beating him into a bloody pulp,
This is
headbutting
cool.
and smashing him to pieces
Headbutting.
as his mobs looked on. Some getting carried away in the violence and even cheering Ghazghkull on. Roaring from his victory, Ghazghkull declared himself the prophet of Gork and Mork.
The
and that
prophet.
this was his mere beginning. The word of Ghazghkull's brutality and power spread fast.
This is
and Orcs
awesome.
flocked to join a band with a sense of purpose and direction, to be something more than the pitiful squabbling and clamouring for scraps that they'd become. The tales of a new boss touched by the gods
New
with a
boss.
vision for war was very appealing.
Yeah.
His further battles with the evil suns and bad moons would be no less aggressive, but required more tactical sense, using burning fuels to shield his troops' approach or outwitting
Oh, this
warlords
dude
with their sense
actually
of pride
was
for their
built
position.
different.
He was placed as an inevitable leader. His subjugation
using
of
strategy.
other warlords continued until he stood poised to do something no other Orc warlord had done in 8,000 years: unite the tribes on the planet of Ork.
Oh, of
His
course.
domination of the planet was unquestioned, but Ghazghkull had set his sights far beyond bringing together the Orcs inhabiting his world.
He wanted to conquer other worlds.
His words drove the Orcs to their
The
purpose,
WAAAGH.
the WAAAGH beginning to form.
The WAAAGH
Their
began to
energy
form.
attracting others,
There
void
it
ships
is.
began to arrive.
There
For the
it
first time in
is.
centuries, mechs worked together, building machines they never could have imagined previously. But now, with the energy and the power of the WAAAGH, it
The
all
WAAAGH.
just worked. It was a miracle. The Orc energies flowed as they riveted together giant battle fortresses and mechs.
This is.
Everything that occurred was
I
the
keep
will
saying
of
it's
Gork
awesome.
and Mork. And Ghazghkull would declare every passing day, every achievement, every new
I
ship
see
arriving
these things in
proved their
fiction,
quest
but
was
it's just not
divine.
Orcs.
Some of the Orcs, they were wondering how they were going to get so many of the Orcs off the planet. They didn't have very many flyers and no large ships to transport and begin their WAAAGH. Ghazghkull
WAAAGH.
quickly silenced them. A solution would present itself. It was the will of Gork and Mork.
And
Days
it
later,
did.
the ever unpredictable tides of the Immaterium would shift again, and that rarest
There
of
it
occurrences would
is.
happen.
There
A
it is.
gigantic ancient space hulk would
A
emerge
space
from the war.
hulk.
Ghazghkull
Hulk.
ordered tractor cannons and harpoon rockets on the few spacecraft that they had to secure the Hulk. They couldn't guess as to how long before the warp would swallow the ancient ship, even with them holding it in place, and they needed to work fast.
Okay.
The Orcs rushed to assist in mech construction. They crafted as many transports and war machines as possible. Once they deemed enough was enough, they crammed as many Orcs into every possible space and set off. This great exodus from their backwater planet filled the skies, not without
This is
many
crazy.
near collisions and engine failures.
Crazy.
Sure. Crashing into the Space Hulk's outer hull, some managed to make their way inside, some straight on ploughed into the vessel, and those with more sense sought out landing positions. The Orcs
They're
soon
just
discovered
ramming
that
this
they
thing.
weren't alone on the space Hulk, with
Uh-oh.
wave after wave of demons spilling out of its corridors.
I ain't gonna lie, I'm rooting for the Orcs.
Battling
Orcs
through
are
the
fighting
horrors,
demons.
Ghazghkull and his band fought through to the center of the Hulk, where they found merged and jumbled by the warp was the ship, the Dominion. This was the vessel the humans had attempted to flee from the planet on some several thousand years ago, and seemingly it had been swallowed by the warp, its human occupants devoured by the demons as they lay trapped in their vessel.
Okay.
The void rift that was spilling demons had to be closed, but Ghazghkull, after ordering his orcs to fire everything they had, was furious to discover it had no effect. His own weapon, even his own power claw, eventually with a massive headbutt and a flash of green light, that did the job, closing the demonic portal. It seems likely his latent psychic energy was what affected this.
Okay, I was about to look at
but
why.
For the orcs observing, it was only further imbued their belief that this warlord was a force like no other. Ghazghkull now
Headbutted his way with
conquered
psychic
space over
powers.
the orc warship World Killer.
World Killer. World Killer!
The
World
ship would
Killer!
drift on for an undetermined
Ignore
period
me.
of time, in which the orcs would explore, loot, and generally rip off whatever they could find on board, cannibalizing the ship and using its materials to craft ever more powerful mechs and weapons. They appropriated everything they could lay their hands on and built everything they could lend their hands to. The best scrap would often lead to infighting and rivalry, all a positive thing for the orcs to keep their tensions and blood up. It would not be a quiet
positive
period, though.
thing.
Travelling through the warp in such an unsecure vessel is dangerous, and many times they'd be assaulted by further demonic incursions. And these assaults only further heightened the orcs' WAAAGH until the entire Space Hulk was seething with orc energies.
Orc energy! Orc energy! It's gonna be a lot of cringe.
The Space Hulk jolted, and huge tremors swept across the ship. The World
The
Killer
warp started?
had shifted back into real space.
Into real space. Okay.
Imperium records date the emergence of the Space Hulk in the year 941 M41.
941
They
M41.
were
That's a
headed for
year?
the core planet of the star system.
Hold on. 941 M41. I gotta look up that concept. 941 M41 is a year in Warhammer. Why?
An Imperial world
like
aptly
80.
named Armageddon. An industrial hive planet where thousands of years of extensive industry had left it a barren wasteland with a totally collapsed ecosystem. Humans only survived in the concentrated hive cities that stood kilometers tall, and also in the Imperial
Hive
military
cities.
facilities stationed there. Food needed to be imported off-world, and no life
Oh.
existed outside of the hives. It
Oh.
contained multiple vast
Why would you live
manufacturers
here?
vital to
I guess you have
munition
no
supplies
choice.
for the Astra Militarum. But with one of the most savage and relentless WAAAGHs ever seen headed straight for them, it seemed like nothing was going to be able to stop World Killer and its crew.
I'm rooting for World
So you
Killer.
should
I
head
ain't gonna
straight
hold
for the
you.
planet without
What a
stopping.
story they
The
have.
plan? There wasn't a plan.
No
They
plan.
crashed straight into the planet. Ghazghkull was literally on a collision course with his destiny. Caught off guard, nearby Imperial fleets and the planet's defences did what they could to slow the assault, but this only chipped away at the massive Space Hulk that approached. Taking minimal effective damage, it ploughed straight into the planet's polluted
Into
atmosphere,
the planet.
crashing with obvious devastation onto its surface. Even though many thousands of orcs would be turned to ashes on impact, this was
This
but
is
a tiny
absurd.
percentage of their total force.
Absurd.
To the survivors, Ghazghkull seized this opportunity.
Let's-
It is
let's
the will of
go!
Gork and Mork that we survive.
The
he
will
was
of Gork
proclaimed.
and Mork
The
that we
orcs now
survive.
twice as pumped up, having survived their world-ending crash into
Even
the planet
more
with a
adrenaline,
force
basically.
None would wish to reckon with. And
Insane.
Ghazghkull quickly divided his massive army into 5 hordes, with leaders that he'd subdued and recruited to his cause back on Earth.
Leaders that he
They've now
subdued.
stepped forth, millions of orc, but one voice.
Millions of orc, but one
The human
voice.
defenders weren't prepared for this.
No,
They
I
had
couldn't
many
be.
forces, war gear and munitions, but the sheer scale of the violence and ferocity they were met with was of nothing they dreamt of in their worst nightmares.
Oh, these
Which in
soldiers
the
are
41st
cool.
Millennium is certainly saying something. This was not an ordinary orc WAAAGH. This was Ghazghkull Thraka's WAAAGH.
Guys,
The
go
orcs showed
fuck us wild.
expectedly no mercy at any instance, and they
No,
defeated
why
the
would they?
humans on the wastelands with their speeders and battle wagons, ruined enemy supply lines and cut down anything that moved. And they quickly turned their attention to structures that they had never seen before.
They start shooting buildings.
Taller than mountains, industry and engineering on an imperial scale. The mechs stood in awe. So much scrap they would have made.
Of
At
course.
the first hive they encountered, despite the Imperium putting up a formidable defense at Hive Volcanus, heavily fortified, this would take all of Ghazghkull's cunning. He had his Gargants, but he wanted to take this city with orcs on the ground, scorching, burning and reaping through the trenches. The orcs would smash, crush and break this city. Using his visionary
Break
choices
the
of
city.
units, Ghazghkull crushed the human defences quickly, and on breaking the gates, unleashing a wave of infantry. His will was executed perfectly, a tall order for an Ork WAAAGH. Desperate humans resorted to
Again, I like that. We know how the Orcs is fighting, fam. They are probably losing people. They're brutal. Shoulders getting popped out. Chest is getting imploded. Heads is getting ripped off. Only a lump brain, I don't know, a little stubby stub is probably left there, and they just keep on going. Oh, the poor humans. I would hate. I don't think they've made an alien invasion movie as bad as this. But guys, that's what I actually want to see. I want to see an Oh, the closest we had was Battlefield Los Angeles, but that was pretty dope. But the difference is, like in Battlefield Los Angeles, if you guys ever watched it, the aliens are truly like unstoppable until they were stoppable. But I want more of this. These zombie aliens that you can gun down and just maim. I think that's a word. And they just repair and they're shouting and they just keep going. And I want the planet to be at a total war when this happens. I want that kind of movie. And it's when to survive, we literally just gotta beat them. It might be 3 seasons or 3 movies until we beat them. I can't think of the climactic way to do this. Or we just don't. And that's why humans jettison the planet. Yeah, make that be futuristic Earth gets bodied by an orc horde, and then we have to leave our planet somewhere else. And like, I don't know. I don't know what happens after we leave. That's part 2. That's cool.
guerrilla warfare, but despite much heroism, the Orcs swept through like a plague, slaughtering and enslaving its occupants. Its manufactorums were quickly converted to Orc workshops. Human slaves turned to stripping their own city for every scrap of resource that could be used to fashion more Orc mechs. Now, on the planet of Armageddon, one human stood out from the general perception of the Orcs as a weak and puny race. Commissar Sebastian Yaboyrocklee.
Commissar
He drew unusual
Sebastian.
respect from the Orcs, not least because he wore goth colours of the black and red, but also sporting an augmented power claw and bionic eye. This was a human the Orcs could get on board with. Even more so when they learned from enslaved humans that they often feared Yaboyrocklee as much as they feared their other enemies. Yaboyrocklee known for shooting disobeying soldiers out of hand. Orcs, upon seeing him in battle though, were often disappointed to see he wasn't quite as big as they'd imagined. He was only a human-sized figure. Oh well. He was an uncompromising warrior nonetheless.
Oh, they still respected him though.
Yaboyrocklee was the man
That's kinda
credited
cool.
with withstanding the Orc assault on Hive Hades for a significant period of time.
Oh, I hope he
brought the
survived.
Armageddon War to a new level of brutality. The Orcs had already sacked 2 Hive cities, and Hades stood next in line.
Hades.
The Imperium, in desperation, would launch virus bombs.
I was thinking
Devices not
viruses.
used since the time of heresy against the Orcs. And even though hundreds of thousands of Orcs would perish, it wasn't enough.
Well, they got
Ghazghkull
immunity?
wanted Hades, and he would direct the assault himself.
Oh, so
He tried
viruses can
everything
work.
he could think of, growing ever more frustrated all the time. But all his traditional assaults would fail time and time again. Eventually, he summoned his weird boys to use their WAAAGH consumed minds to blast a psychic storm at the Hive.
Psychic
Consumed
storm.
by madness, the human defenders fell apart, but
Aww.
still the humans couldn't be defeated.
Oh,
Orc
okay.
fires were ripped apart by anti-aircraft fire. Tunnel fighters.
How do
cut
they
their
keep
Orc
getting these
tribes
supplies?
underground to pieces, and human
Everything
suicide
is being
assault
used.
squads took down the immense Orc Gargants. All this would be Commissar Yaboyrocklee. Ghazghkull by now had become fixated and obsessed with bringing down Hive Hades. His vision and judgment clouded by the frustration and needing to bring it down. While still
Needing to
battling
bring it
this
down.
bitter assault, he would direct an Orc horde to assault another Hive city, Acheron.
Why?
Perhaps in the hope to divert resources away or gain a victory and
Oh.
rally his troops to greater energy.
Oh, that makes
But then,
sense.
the worst possible development for the Orcs. Orbital bombs rained from the sky as roaring Space Marine Thunderhawks would sweep down into the planet.
Space Marine
Blood
Thunderhawks.
Angels, Ultramarines,
Blood
and
Angels.
Salamanders.
Oh,
The Emperor's chosen
Salamanders.
warriors were here to defend Armageddon.
Oh,
Ghazghkull was
that's
still
the
so
music
blinded
change. Hold
by
on, hold
fury
on,
in
hold
his efforts
on.
to defeat Yaboyrocklee.
I can't believe I'm getting
While still
hype
battling
on a
this
review
bitter assault,
video.
He would direct an Orc horde
It
to
was
assault
well
another Hive
done.
city, Acheron. Perhaps in the hope to divert resources away or gain
This
a
is
victory
good.
and rally his troops to greater energy.
I gotta catch the
Then,
epicness again.
the
But
worst
then
possible development for the Orcs.
the music.
Orbital bombs rained from the sky. as
Orbital
roaring Space Marine
bombs.
Thunderhawks would sweep down into the planet.
If you want to know why I'm so excited, now I got people. I listened to the lore of the Space Marines, and I got introduced to groups. But now that I got introduced to like the Lion, and I know this isn't the Lion, I have more of a connection with the capabilities of these guys. And mankind. I just told you about the movie. I just told you about the movie. I didn't know how part two was going to end. I said they was going to abandon the planet. So now I'm thinking of the awesomeness. By the way, this is actually terrible. You don't want this to happen. But mankind is just struggling, man. We're like, I don't know, 100 years ahead of this time. So at least we have drones and machines helping us out. And we're just fighting our backs against the wall. And we can't abandon this planet and just a spatial bombardment. I don't think you guys, sorry, I have to whisper because of my family. They're about to go to sleep. I don't think you guys understand. I'm literally coughing on how deep these orbital assaults are. Listen, you don't know how cool it is to get an orbital barrage of weapons from space. Like, you getting hit by somebody that you can't even see. I don't know if you guys ever watched Gundam 00. That's one of my favorites. I won't spoil it for you, but there's a scene where it's very important to knock something like out of space, son, from Earth, and you can't see the target. There's clouds, all this stuff in there. So orbital barrage, whatever they just called it just now, that shit is just fire. Just bombs just falling on the ground, indiscriminately taking out everything. So orcs are like, press it up! Getting bombarded with overwhelming technology from a target they probably can't hit because they crashed the thing, man. That space cathedral. I forget what you call it. But they crashed it down. That shit is cool, man.
The Blood Angels, Ultramarines, and
Three.
Salamanders. The Emperor's chosen warriors.
The Emperor's chosen warriors were here to defend Armageddon.
So blinded by fury.
Blinded by fury.
Yarrick and Hades, he was unable to think with clarity enough to counter the arriving Space Marines. He would
Space
throw
Marines.
everything he had to take down his obsession, breaking in the blast doors of Hades in a final rampage. The Space Marines would be too late to save Hive Hades. Its citizens massacred. With Ghazghkull's numbers now though severely depleted and loosely scattered across the planet, he consolidated his last reinforcements to a new hive, Tartarus. The planet stood at a crossroads, even with the arrival of the Space Marines. They would deploy even as the Orcs began their assault with mechs, stompers, and even Gorkanauts. The battle though was not in the Orcs' favour, but then Ghazghkull himself arrived. The Orcs could taste things were turning for them, but then just as quickly as he arrived, he'd gone. Chatter spread quickly through the Orcs that the war boss had fallen. They began to waver to break, and the Imperium crushed the remaining Orcs, driving them from Armageddon.
Sure. And that just probably
But the
burned
Orcs
the planet
thinking
down.
Ghazghkull had fallen in battle was not so. Ghazghkull was not slain, but he did disappear from the battlefield. Rumours spread that the hand of Gork had plucked him from the battlefield, and his detractors would say fled, usually to be met with a swift headbutt from a nearby Orc, putting them in their place. However, it did happen. Ghazghkull had escaped. After Armageddon, Ghazghkull did not rest. As with most Orcs, defeat is not really a thing, it's just a stumble, a setback, the chance to have another go. This was the beginning for him in his larger journey, a plan of Gork and Mork.
A plan of Gork and
Yarrick
Mork.
recommended the Imperium hunt down this brutal war boss and eliminate him once and for all. But the Imperium assumed him dead or defeated and didn't want to spend the resources or time to locate an Orc.
Of course.
They were sure that that was the last they'd see of.
No,
This
that was a mistake.
grave error of judgment, as is often the case with most things in the Imperium.
Yes.
To the Imperium's mind, his WAAAGH had failed, and therefore, even if he did survive, Orcs would not look upon him for leadership with his energy deflated.
But his
After
energy
losing a
wasn't
battle,
deflated.
While Orcs will happily try again, they'll often topple their leader, as is their natural order of things. But not so with Ghazghkull. While he may have had to defeat several challengers in brutal fashion after he regrouped with various Orc tribes to remind them just who he was, he would begin gaining new followers again. Curiously, for an Orc, not just with his actions, but with his words. To him, the invasion of Armageddon had been a starting point, a testing of the enemy to find their strengths and their weaknesses, a large-scale intelligence gathering.
Oh, that's what you called it?
Leaving millions
Orc-style.
dead and burning cities in its wake. And in this, they gained much useful information. Now Ghazghkull knew about Imperium strategies. He would
That's true.
regroup, rebuild, and restore
true.
his prophetic WAAAGH. He would reveal to his fellow Orcs, in order to destroy your enemy,
You have to know your
you
enemy.
must know him. To the Orcs, this is about as profound as it gets,
Book
and their spirits would reignite.
Study of
The
War.
second coming
Dang, I
of
forgot the
Ghazghkull
book.
Thraka was only a matter of
The
time.
second coming. That was awesome. I think it was an awesome video. Awesome video. You know what? I found myself, I as much as I said I like the Orcs, and I do, the hype came when the Space Marines came, fam. So I want to know what group I should explore more that match my personality. The Salamanders are who I like the most so far because they're at least like nice to people to a certain degree. The White Wolves, I believe, and I know it. I know it. Don't tell me. Oh, the ones, if I can say it, I believe they resemble like Asians. They looked Asian, and they didn't seek out battle like everybody else did, but they did fight and take pride in it. I'm pretty sure it was those people, and there's not a lot of lore about them. Those are my top three. Um, in another video, I'm going to show you what ChatGPT said my top groups are, and we can go for there. But those are the three Space Marines groups I'm into the most. But to tell you like what my personality would be, you know, I actually couldn't tell you. I'm just gonna freeball. I like the relentless attack, and I either like see my personality is too all over the place. So I like the relentless attack, like you led like Thor, and you just want the glory of war. It's relentless. You know, you're not stopping anybody. You're showboating. You're bragging about your accomplishments. You're just owning. And the other type of warriors I like are the Eisen types. If you watch anime, really methodical, using plots, using schemes, being very intricate. But I would never fight that way. So that I like that. I admire characters, but I'd be more under. But that's what I'd follow. That's what I'd follow. If you want to know my personality as a fighter, like who I am, my personality is I am defensive. I like speed, but I don't like speed for what you think I would want speed for, which is offensively. I like speed for defense, interestingly enough. I like to punch my target as hard as I can and quickly get out. You know what I mean? I kind of do a little bit of boxing, but I want my speed to just come in, bop, 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 and then be out. So like you know how they had certain races and they had like these bikes or vehicles and they were speed racing it. I wouldn't want those because those don't have good armor. I would want aerial units. Yo, we got a lot of aerial units. Got like aircraft carriers, launching aircraft. We're fighting from the skies, and then I send my ground troops in with air support. Lots of air support. So there we go. My group, we have ground troops, but we specialize with heavy, heavy air support. We don't have bikes. We have Humvees. Not a lot of tanks because tanks move slow. So it's going to be fast moving vehicles that are armored, that do have guns and protection, but they're not so armored where they're slow, and they're not so light where they're not fast. We want to drive up to our target with reasonable defense, bombarding and using aerial units to cover us. A lot of choppers, you know, they're kind of low, they're not super high. Choppers kind of down low. That would be my fighting style when I think about it. So then in real life, if I'm a warrior, the weapon I would use would probably be good old sword and shield. I like defense, and I also like the pole that's kind of like a pike. I think you don't call it a pike. It's a pole with a long blade at the end. It's not a pike. It's not a pike because a pike is similar to a spear. I like that because you keep the opponent like kind of far from you. I don't want to be fighting too close and take damage, you know? So, anyways, that's kind of cool. That's kind of cool. And I probably like a little bit of archery. Little things I could hit you with from afar. Throwing knives. I don't know. Just tell you what my ideas are that kind of won't interest you. Anyways, I like this video. It was rather long. I did have to take a break. I felt my sugar just crash in the end, but it really had nothing to do with the content. You know, it's you guys want to see what time it is? Is my computer going to show you? No, it won't. Watch this. No, I guess it's not considered late to you guys. As a dad, this is late. What time is it? Yo, yes, I consider this late, but I do boxing, and then my sugar started to crash because I worked like 2,000 calories. You see what I used to like before, and then honestly, and even though I'm supposed to be on a diet, I had to eat some ice cream. I needed some sugar to do this, but I wanted the information, but it wasn't going to be a video where you saw me hype. And I feel like, you know, the fact that I take the time to write stuff and then talk about it, I feel like you guys know that I'm not like, oh my god, this is boring. I have questions. I just don't have the energy today to be like hype. I also feel like it's not a video that you need to be hype. So I'm done with Orcs. We're gonna go over to Fulgrim next. All right, that's a 20-minute video. And then as I'm covering these, I'm gonna see what y'all's suggestions are. Remember, the pinned comment is ideally the place to leave those suggestions. Especially you guys heard what you know, my races I was interested in, or Space Marines I was interested in, and we'll circle back. So anyways, guys, thanks for watching my video. Until next time, Rock D Lee, subscribe. I'll see you on Twitter.
And you know I couldn't stop at just one channel. Consider subscribing to the subsidiary channels for your boy Rock Lee, found in the description of this video. Thank you.